What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do a full review of the Esky Albatross. There are a lot of amazing and incredible features about this plane. Number one is that the price is actually really good for a plane that has an 8.5 foot wingspan. This is a very large sailplane. It is an intermediate to advanced sailplane. It is not going to be a good choice for guys who are just getting into RC airplanes or wanting your first sailplane. This wouldn't be a good first sailplane, but it has a lot of options on here. There are some tricks to setting it up and getting the CG exactly right, which we're going to talk about in this video. I'm going to give you the specs that I used for my setup to get the CG right. I know Bruce over at XJet had some issues with the CG and getting that exactly right. So first off, it needs a lot of weight forward. I added 4.5 extra ounces of weight in the nose of this aircraft to get it to balance out right. The original tail fins have been since replaced with newer and lighter ones. We had some issues on the first production of this plane with those being kind of overly heavy. What they were trying to do is make it more durable for you guys, but in the end what happened was it made it a little bit tail heavy. So my first toss, when I thought that I had the CG exactly right, even after I added my weight, I had a nose up and sort of wing over episode and it went straight into the ground. So my first flight was a durability test and I could have destroyed this entire plane. There have been instances on my channel where I have destroyed a plane on one of the first launches because I didn't have something exactly right or a component failed. The good news is here that this plane is extremely durable. When it hit the ground head on, it has a metal nose cone up front and a folding prop. The prop didn't break. The nose cone has a recessed and it has a front end on it and it has venting through here. So that air is able to pass through here and cool the motor in ESC, which is really nice. It is also not bent. Even though it hit head on into some clay type of dirt, it had a full frontal impact. It did not destroy the firewall, which is also kind of amazing. I have blown out the entire front end of airplanes, especially these EPO style airplanes, all the way back to about here, halfway down the battery compartment, which is very, very likely to happen on any type of full frontal airplane crash. Now this canopy, if I can get it off here for you, it will allow something as large as a 5,000 milliamp battery. If you want to cram a 5,000 in there, you can get it in there without the canopy on. If you want to run an average stock style battery that's going to get you around 15 minutes to 30 minutes flight time, you can run something like the 4S 2650. And the reason I say 15 to 30 minutes is because it depends on your weather conditions. If you have a nice headwind, gliders like a little bit of wind because you can nose into the wind and kill the throttle. Use the ESC brake, it will come to a complete stop. The braking is already set up on this ESC, which is nice. It is also a 40 amp ESC, which is perfect for this particular 14-inch prop power combo setup. We have a pretty large brushless motor in there. That brushless motor was actually a 2820-600 kV motor running along with this super large wingspan to be able to carry all this weight. This plane weighs in at about 2,600 grams, so it is a very large sailplane. And again, it is an intermediate style plane. It's not a good plane. If this is your first RC airplane, this would be extremely hard. Number one, to get set up exactly right. You want to use about 30% expo on your servos all the way around, on your ailerons and on the elevator on the tail. Now, what's also cool is that this has detachable wing and tail fins, which is nice. So these just pop off. They have two carbon rods here and a power connector point, which just snap on and off really easily. It also has a little bit of a clip there, which locks into place, a lot like the Zod planes. And honestly, it kind of looks like a Zod color scheme on here. I like the white and the black. The wings are all black. They have pre-installed servos. And what's nice is that the smaller servos on here, there's 4 9-gram servos. And they have 17-gram servos metal geared servos on the ailerons, which is extremely important for gliders. If you have flown any high altitude gliders in your RC lifetime, your experience, you know that you need metal gear servos on gliders, because this is a super large wing. It's over 4 foot wingspan here on just one side of it. And having an 8.5 foot wingspan with all that tension on the wing, you would shred a plastic geared servo. So it's nice that they did include metal geared servos. Now it is an extremely flat profile here with a tiny bit of taper on the end. So it does kind of go into the classification of hotliner. And when it comes by you on the field for the first time, you do a flyby with this plane, it sounds extremely cool. It sounds like some kind of Star Wars speeder speeding by you. It's really, really cool. It sounds like a spaceship. It has a very distinct sound in the air. You can hear all of this wind rushing over the wings as it passes you. Now, also, we're going to run a flight controller today, and I've talked about this flight controller before. It's the Zod Copilot flight controller. It is sitting just behind where I'm going to have my battery in the fuselage, and I have my GPS running back here. So this flight controller is about $39. It is plug and play. You plug in the servos in your receiver here, and if you fail safe, the nice thing is that you lose connection from your receiver, it will turn around, level out, and come fly back to home and loiter around the home point, right where you took off, which is nice, at the altitude you specify. No computer is needed to set up this flight controller. It's not like iNav where you have to go on your computer and set everything up and test everything to make sure all the switches are working. You only require one 3-position switch to have this flight controller working, and it has stabilize mode, manual, and return to home on a switch, which is very nice. You put that on any RC airplane out there. Now, 8.5 foot wingspan, 2,600 grams on this glider. It will carry a GoPro 360 camera. You will have enough room still to put that 4S 2650 in there. You can also try out some Lion packs if you're making your own. Then that'll push your flight time to about maybe an hour to an hour and a half, with maybe even a couple 4S 3500 packs. These are the Zod ones, but these only handle about a 10 amp load, continuous load draw on these packs. These are 18650s again. You have to have a Lion style charger to be able to charge those. Most of the ISDT chargers will charge these, but running them in a series or parallel on here would be a nice setup for a little bit of extended flight time. So we'll try to test those out later on the channel. They also have a larger one coming out. It's 7,000 milliamp, but let's go ahead. Let's take this glider out. Let me show you some amazing flight footage and one of the cooler videos that you're going to see on my channel this year. This is the Esky Albatross, guys. Let's go ahead and do some flying and have some amazing fun with this glider. Around 250 bucks. I can't believe the price for all this plug and play gear. It's really cool. Here we go, guys. All right, guys, let's go ahead and do the Albatross flight test together, and let me share my experience with you guys. Now, the hand launch, it does take quite a bit of strength to launch this plane, but the motor and the prop combo are so big that it feels like it's going to take off out of your hand a little, just barely at half throttle. So that little bit of extra throttle there is going to just easily keep the nose up. Make sure you're not obviously tilting it too far up when you let go of it. You want to kind of be holding it as straight across as you can, because the wings will give you plenty of lift. They're gigantic. We almost have 9 feet of wing on this plane. It's crazy. Now, in forward flight, my cruise was somewhere around 35% throttle to maybe 40% throttle when I'm trying to go a little faster. You rarely ever will fly this plane at full throttle. It can handle it. On the takeoff, if you almost hit full throttle climbing up, that's not going to be a problem. The wing is very smooth and efficient. It doesn't have a lot of drag, so this is a super fast sailplane. And again, I think the most amazing thing about this plane is probably the way it sounds when it flies by. If you guys are guys that like the flyby, just kind of buzz the tower kind of guys, you're going to enjoy that sound of that plane coming by. It's going to definitely be something that your buddies talk about at the field when this thing comes by, especially when you stop the motor and come by. It's not quite silent. It has this weird, strange whoosh sound as it comes by, because it's such a massive plane. It having a little fun with keyframing on my Insta360 camera. If you guys have never seen an Insta360 in action, you're in for a treat in this video, because I'm able to drag around on my phone from my app and make keyframes. We're able to kind of look around in a 360 pan on the top of the Albatross right here, which is really kind of cool. We'll look out to the side. I really like the wing views on these planes. I used to have to mount like 4 different cameras on my planes to be able to get this kind of view perspective. Down the wing camera, I usually had one pointing backwards, one pointing forwards, sometimes one on each wing. And there's the tail shot. Really cool that you can just spin these cameras all the way around. And here I'm just taking my time getting used to the controls. One thing that I noticed on the bench is that the servos have a very sort of high quality servo sound to them. They do not sound cheap at all. When you move them with your hands on the bench as well, when it's not plugged in, you can tell that they're good quality servos. Again, I wish I could show the brand. I don't know the brand on these, but a lot of these are made in the same factory. But there are many different levels of quality coming out of China, so you definitely want to stick with the metal geared servos on these planes. But how cool does the V-tail look at the rear view? Look at that. That is so cool. And one thing that I had some problems with as far as our borders and boundaries of our AMA field right here. If you fly at a smaller AMA airfield, most AMA airfields are big enough to accommodate even a 90-inch gas plane. So some of those guys are kind of skirting the edges of the boundaries outside the AMA sanctioned field, which is frowned upon in the community. But I have to say, this plane is definitely skirting the boundaries of our field, because it wants a lot of airspace and it could really use a long range receiver on it. If you want to put crossfire on this plane and take it up in the mountains, that's where this plane wants to live. It wants to be a mountain surfer. It really does. And with some good altitude, you can ride some serious thermals with this plane. I was picking up some thermals out here just over top of this field. A little further over here was where there was more thermals, but that's about the edge of our field right there, so I don't want to go too far over in that neighbor's property. I don't want to get anybody in trouble here. And then back over this direction, and let me show you guys some of the FPV footage. This is the Zod Copilot VC400 camera. You can see that I'm on channel B3 right here, and 5771 I'm running 200 milliwatt. It is a cloverleaf antenna, kind of a classic old school cloverleaf antenna. And you can see my voltage there and my fly time. And right now I'm at 15.7, and almost 8 minutes flight time. I've used about a volt out of this pack, and I still have another volt to go. So on a 2650, we're looking at 20 minutes on a 2650. So if you put even up to about a 4,000 pack in here, I think the 5,000 honestly is just going to be it's going to be flexing the foam too much. I think that the 4,000 is probably the way to go if you're looking for the largest battery. And the larger battery you put in the front end of this plane, you're going to have to accommodate that to the CG, but it also depends on the wind you're flying in. If you want a heavier plane to fly in more wind, as far as up in the mountain goes, you can use a heavier battery. If you're at your local AMA field and it's like it is today, about a 12-mile-an-hour wind, go for the 4S 2650. It's a good battery, and you can still put your GoPro just behind where the canopy is and get a good CG. Right here I'm coming in for trying to come in for a fast landing, but I wasn't able to make it slow down enough there. And that's without flaps. That's how fast it comes down this runway. And our runway is not really that small. There are some large 90-inch planes that come in and land on this field. And lining it up for a landing, FPV or line of sight, it takes a lot of ground to get this thing to go way out and turn around. The old timers always told me to go long and low. Come in long and low. Right here, just playing around with that glide, trying to see if I can find some thermals. It'd be really cool to have an altimeter on this plane. Now back to the motor. It's 600 kV. I'm interested in testing this out for you guys with some Lion packs. I'm gonna have to get a lawn chair when I'm flying this plane, and I'll be flying this plane more this year, and I'll let you guys know how it goes further into the year. If you want to join our Facebook group, you'll see pictures of my trips and travels once a lot of this COVID-19 stuff blows over, hopefully in the summer. We can get back to our road trips and flying. So I'm gonna come in for a kind of a hot landing right here, but landing FPV is always challenging with 8.5 feet of wingspan. You're using no flaps. Look how fast it comes in. Soft as a feather, all in one piece. All right, guys, welcome back from the flight test. So what did you think about that? I know it's kind of hard to tell from YouTube how something flies, what the characteristics are like. Now, on larger sailplanes, when you have this much wing, it's important to know that a very flat profile will show you a very fast wing. Not a lot of dehedral on the end of this. It's not like one of the E-flite Radiants where they have a ton of dehedral and it's very slow and it has almost zero stall capability. I think that as a hotliner profile on this wing, that there will be some tip stall, very possible with this plane. All the weight and momentum, it needs quite a bit of speed to keep a forward amount of lift going in the wings. If you do any really tight turns, I would be very cautious if you do it at a low altitude. So keep a good altitude with this plane when you're making turns. It made me even a little nervous when I was making my turns to come into the runway below like 100 feet, around 50-foot mark. So big wide turns. This plane kind of turns like an Escalade, and keep that in mind when you're flying it. That's a little bit of the turning characteristic. It's not going to turn on a dime. You can try it super high up and see what it does. It might go into a spin. So be ready for that. Be ready to use your rudder to get out of that tail spin. Very important that you set your rudder up correctly. Now, the other thing was that the CG was a little bit hard to set up. So that's not super good news for the new guys. But as far as the crash and durability testing of this plane, I'm impressed with the fact that it held up during the crash. It didn't break the front end. I didn't bend the shaft on this motor. They have a metal nose cone on the front end where it's holding the prop on both sides here. So that didn't bend or break as well, and I didn't even break a prop, which is amazing. And no accordion effect on the fuselage. You can see the fuselage is fine. It's completely fine. And it's such a dense foam that I've had this for over a month now, and there's not a lot of hanger rash on it. There's a few tiny scratches you can see in there, but no real big indentations. Some of the planes out there get indentations on them just from handling them and bringing them out to your car to go fly. Whereas this foam is really dense. You can hear it. Let me show you a Zod plane, for example, and I'll do the same thing with this plane. It's kind of hard to tell, but this foam has a really soft feel to it, whereas this other EPO/EPS is really, really dense. So that's something to be said. This is definitely lighter, but it's way smaller as well. And that's the trade-off there. You're going to get maybe a little more durability out of this type of foam as far as your traveling and your hanger rash goes. Now, as far as the other crash characteristic of this plane that I noticed, that when it went in straight down and it did that lawn dart, when that happened, something interesting happened. Like I said before, no accordion effect in the front of the fuselage. The next thing is that I didn't get any damage on the side where the connections are. This is the connector to the servos on the outside. The power connector here did not get ripped off, and none of this got compromised. I was afraid about this because this would be a little bit difficult to rebuild. Now, what's so awesome about this is the fact that these wings are so heavy, and my carbon spars going through the main wing, it just snapped because the momentum of the wing coming down was so much force that the wings fold out. And when they fold out, the only thing that's going to give in there is actually the carbon spar, which mine did right here at the edge where the fuselage meets the wing. So the other two spars just barely go in, and those did not break, which is awesome. I could probably pull those out and replace them or buy a new wing, but this just slides on like this. And I know Bruce from XJet mentioned that it was hard to put together, but there it is. You just saw me put it together. So I don't know. I don't think it's that hard to put together. The other side, when you come in, you're going to have to hold it with this arm and then pull it in with this arm. You're going to use a little bit of strength to pull it together, but this wing will not separate. If you're worried about it, you can take a little bit of wing tape and put over top between the fuselage and the wing. That'll hold that in place, and it shouldn't wiggle out. But in gliders past, I've had wings separate mid-flight, and that happens on a lot of gliders. So it's good that these are nice and tight, and with all this altitude that you can get with this plane, that's a good thing. You don't want to see this wing kind of doing the wing flutter a couple 100 feet up, headed for the ground, because that means that your fuselage is coming down like a missile. So really cool that this plane survived my flight test, because it was a pretty tough flight test, but I enjoyed flying it. I think that it has a lot of potential, and for the price, $250, it's one of the coolest planes, sailplanes, biggest sailplanes out there for that price. So yeah, I would pick one up if you like sailplanes. Anyway, guys, I'm Justin Davis. Take care, be safe, stay home, and avoid people, guys. Please do subscribe to my channel. This was the Albatross. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.